What's up everybody, this is Joe with Homebuilt, and today we're going to build this 6.5 foot media console. We will use maple plywood for the frame and all the shelves, and then use hard maple for the trim. Let's get it started. We started out with this SketchUp of a very simple, elegant design. I would use dowels to reinforce each of these plywood joints, and each of these legs will screw into a threaded insert. First thing I did after I got home with the plywood was lay the sheets down on these pieces of scrap wood in the garage, and then covered up all of the cut lines with painter's tape. This is going to prevent any chip out during the saw cuts. After ripping down the sheets into manageable pieces, I set up these modular rolling workbenches. These things are great. Each one's 2 feet by 4 feet, and here I set them up long ways with a gap in between to do cross cuts with the circular saw. After I cut the first panel, I used it to measure the length of each of the other walls to make sure that they were all the exact same height. For the trim pieces on the front of the media console, I'm going to use this hard maple that came from the lumber yard. Now the middle of this piece is still a bit rough, but I think I can rip off a few 3/4 inch strips from the ends to make it look really nice. Now here I set the table saw fence to the exact width of the plywood in order to ensure that everything would be flush. Now another big style decision that I had to make was to use edge banding to cover up the plywood veneers on the edge of each piece of wood. You know, sometimes these plywood edges can look really great, but this time we're covering them up. I won't go into great detail here on how to do this, but basically the edge banding has glue on one side and you press it with an iron to melt that glue and make it adhere nicely to the plywood. There's always going to be some edge banding that hangs over, and for this I press a piece of scrap wood along the side and then cut it with a utility knife. I'm going to use dowels to reinforce the glue ups on all of the major joints here. And again, someday I'll be able to invest in a really nice domino joiner, but until then, I found this awesome dowel jig for 10 bucks, and it worked extremely well. It allowed me to drill a hole right along the center of each edge, and then line up all of those dowel holes on the adjoining panels. Now that I have all my dowels drilled and placed in the panels, I can start gluing everything together. Now this is the most fun part of the project, the part where you get to see it all come together and take shape. Then it's over to the miter saw to cut down these trim pieces to size. And some of these need a 45-degree cut. And whenever I do those, I always make sure to keep the saw turned to one side to make sure that the pieces will always match up perfectly. Now these trim pieces here are actually what the cabinet doors will attach to. The centerpiece here won't be as hidden, so I used 2 pocket screws to make sure it would hold the cabinet doors forever. And you know, I don't always like using pocket holes, but in this build there are a couple of instances where it just made the most sense. Now that the cabinet trim was all secure, it was time to add the top piece. And this is the moment of truth. Would all of my dowels line up? I had to do this all in one pass and put glue on each one of the vertical panels at the same time, and then get the top panel on and clamp down before the glue started drying. And this day is like 105 degrees Fahrenheit in Austin, so glue dries super fast. Then for the cabinet doors, I use this Kreg cabinet hole jig, which helps get all the holes lined up to the same depth from the edges, and also make sure that the holes are drilled to the same depth along the face of the board as well. So I chiseled out any of the remaining glue chunks at the joints, then sanded the whole piece up to 220 grit sandpaper, and then applied 3 coats of water-based polyurethane. I gave a light sanding with 220 grit after the first 2 coats, and then after the 3rd top coat, I like to sand it with a paper bag, which doesn't disturb the top coat, but still manages to knock out any small bumps or impurities left behind by the polyurethane. Then it was time to start attaching everything, beginning with the cabinet doors. On the legs themselves, what I'll do is I'll screw in a hanger bolt which has coarse threading on one half to go into the softwood, and then the other half is like a machine screw which can go right into the insert on the bottom of the piece. So to attach these hanger bolts, I had to find the center of the circle, and then I'm going to drill a pilot hole using this makeshift drill guide that I made out of a scrap piece of red oak. To get the hanger bolt into this table leg, I'm going to feed the machine end of the hanger bolt directly into my drill and lock the chuck in place. Then add a drop of glue to the table leg, and then I can drill it directly right up to the chuck. I'm also using these wooden spacers so the inserts don't put through the other side. So as you can see, the two middle doors are a slightly different shade of maple than the rest of the piece, but I think it looks pretty cool. This was my first video. Let me know your thoughts. Like the video if you liked it, and click the dislike button. Click the like button if you liked it. Hit the dislike button if you didn't like the video. And what was that other one? Subscribe if you feel like it. And subscribe if you feel like it. I look forward to making more videos in the future. Until next time.